My boss stole my career. Then I fell into depression, but then I found backup files of all my projects. Code is my life, and integrity is my core value. My name is Michael Davis, 39 years old, senior software engineer at a tech company in Seattle. I dedicated 14 years to the company, starting as an intern right out of college until the day my boss took everything I'd built and pushed me out the door. I joined the company in 2010 with my computer science degree still fresh in hand. The company was smaller then, a promising startup with big dreams and a creative atmosphere. I was hired by the original founder, Thomas, who saw potential in my passion for clean, efficient code. "Your academic record is impressive, Michael," Thomas told me during my interview. "But what I really like is how you think about systems. You don't just code to make something work. You code to make it right." Thomas was a mentor who encouraged innovation, pushed us to solve problems in new ways, and always gave credit where it was due. Over the years, I climbed from junior developer to lead engineer as the company grew from 30 employees to over 400. We survived the growing pains of rapid expansion, 3 office moves, and the transition from startup to established tech firm. Our flagship product, a business communication platform I'd helped architect from the beginning, became the company's main revenue generator and attracted bigger clients each year. My fingerprints were on virtually every aspect of the platform's core functionality. I'd written the initial messaging protocol, designed the database architecture that allowed it to scale, and led the team that developed its encryption system. Colleagues jokingly called me the architect, or the platform's dad. I'd sacrificed countless evenings and weekends, missed family gatherings, and postponed vacations when critical issues needed addressing. Everything changed when Thomas stepped down as CTO 3 years ago, and James took over, a Harvard MBA with impressive credentials but limited technical knowledge. James had a different vision, focused on quarterly results and market expansion rather than product integrity and innovation. His first act was bringing in his own team of managers, including my new boss, Kevin. Kevin was everything I wasn't: polished, slick, and politically savvy where I was straightforward, focused on code quality, and somewhat socially awkward. He spoke the corporate language that impressed executives while I communicated in technical terms. From our first meeting, there was tension. Kevin viewed me as a remnant of the old guard, a Thomas loyalist who needed to be managed or removed. "We need to modernize our approach," he said in our first one-on-one meeting. "Legacy thinking is holding us back from our true potential." The implication was clear. I represented that legacy thinking, despite the fact that my legacy code was powering the entire company's success. I tried to adapt, attending leadership workshops, practicing my presentation skills, making efforts to explain technical concepts in business terms. But the more I tried to meet Kevin halfway, the more he seemed determined to sideline me. In meetings, he would cut me off, redirect questions meant for me to his favorites, or diminish my contributions with subtle comments. "That's an interesting perspective, Michael. But let's look at this from a business angle," he would say. Or, "That approach might have worked in the old days, but we need forward-thinking solutions now." Each comment was a paper cut, minor in isolation but debilitating in aggregate. Still, I persevered, believing my work would speak for itself. In November 2023, I began developing an AI-driven feature for our platform that would analyze communication patterns and suggest workflow improvements to boost productivity. It was cutting-edge work that combined natural language processing with behavioral analytics, potentially increasing our clients' efficiency by 30%, according to my initial tests. I threw myself into the project, spending nights and weekends refining the algorithm, documenting every step, and running extensive tests. My girlfriend Jenny would bring dinner to my home office, where I'd be surrounded by empty coffee cups and notebooks filled with ideas and code snippets. "Don't burn yourself out," she'd warn. But I was driven by a desire to reconnect with the pure joy of creation that had defined my early years at the company. By March 2024, with the project 90% complete and showing promising results in beta tests, I prepared to present my findings at the quarterly product meeting. I spent days refining my presentation, creating clear visuals to explain complex concepts. The night before the meeting, I received the final agenda via email and scrolled through to confirm my time slot, only to discover my name had been removed entirely. Confused, I immediately emailed Kevin, then followed up with a text when I received no response. The next morning, I arrived early and waited by Kevin's door until he arrived. "There's been a change of plans," he said dismissively, not meeting my eyes. "I'll be presenting the AI integration project." I followed him inside, the door closing behind us. "But that's my project," I protested, struggling to keep my voice even. "I've been working on it for months. I developed the entire architecture, wrote the algorithms, ran all the tests." "It's a company project," he corrected with a cold smile. "And as department head, I've made some crucial contributions that have elevated it to presentation quality. Your technical work was a good start, but it needed a strategic framework to make it viable for our enterprise clients." I was stunned, a physical sensation, like being doused with ice water. But what could I do? The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon, and challenging Kevin would only make me look petty or not a team player. So I swallowed my pride and sat silently in the back row of the conference room, watching as Kevin presented my work as if it were his own creation. Occasionally, he would make vague references to the team's efforts, but the impression was clear. This was Kevin's brainchild, his innovation, his gift to the company. He even used my own phrases, terminology I had developed specifically for this project. What happened next was worse than I could have imagined. Kevin's presentation, my presentation, received enthusiastic response from the executive team. James, our CEO, praised the innovative thinking and announced on the spot that this initiative would become a priority development track with additional resources. Kevin would head up this new division and hand-select his team. I waited for my name to be mentioned, for Kevin to acknowledge my role, but nothing came. No recognition, no credit, not even a token acknowledgement of my contributions. As applause filled the room, I sat motionless, a ghost witnessing my own erasure from the narrative. In the following days, I found myself increasingly isolated. There was no invitation to the AI team formation meetings, no requests for documentation transfers, no recognition of my foundational work, just silence. Some colleagues avoided eye contact in the hallways, while others offered sympathetic glances when they thought no one was looking. 2 weeks later, I was called to a meeting with HR. When I arrived, Maureen, the HR director, sat side by side with Kevin, their matching expressions of manufactured concern not quite masking the corporate execution about to take place. "Michael, we need to discuss your performance," Maureen began, opening a folder containing what appeared to be my personnel file. "My performance? What are you talking about? I've consistently exceeded expectations in every review for 14 years. "There have been concerns," Kevin interjected, "about your ability to adapt to our evolving culture, your resistance to collaboration, and some issues with your recent code contributions not meeting our new quality standards." It was surreal, sitting there hearing my work ethic questioned after 14 years of positive reviews. As they continued outlining vague shortcomings and examples taken out of context, I realized this was no performance improvement discussion. This was an execution, planned to eliminate me now that my most valuable work had been appropriated. "We've decided to eliminate your position," Maureen finally said, sliding a severance package across the table. 2 months' salary and benefits continuation through the end of the quarter. We'll need your badge and laptop before you leave today. I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience, watching someone else's life fall apart. Within an hour, I had cleaned out my desk, packing 14 years into a cardboard box while colleagues watched from behind monitor screens, quickly looking away when I glanced in their direction. A security guard, the same one who had greeted me by name every morning for years, escorted me to the front door. 14 years of dedication ended with a cardboard box and a silent walk to the parking garage, my access badge deactivated before I even reached my car. The first week after being fired, I was in shock, my brain unable to process the sudden shift in my identity. I alternated between anger, disbelief, and desperate planning. I updated my resume, sent applications to every tech company in Seattle, went through the motions of networking calls. But as rejection letters accumulated, or silence stretched on, my confidence began to crumble. By the second week, the depression hit like a physical weight crushing my chest, making it difficult to get out of bed, impossible to focus on anything requiring mental energy. My apartment became both refuge and prison. Dishes piled in the sink. Curtains remained drawn. Code that once flowed from my fingers now seemed like a foreign language. The passion that had driven me since childhood faded to a distant memory. Jenny, my girlfriend of 3 years, tried to help, bringing meals, encouraging me to go for walks, suggesting therapy. "This isn't who you are, Michael," she would say. "What happened was terrible, but it doesn't define you." But I pushed her away, unable to articulate the depth of my betrayal, unable to explain how much of my identity had been wrapped up in being Michael from the company. After a particularly difficult evening when I snapped at her for not understanding, Jenny stopped coming by as frequently. She didn't break up with me officially, just gave me space to process. Space that became its own kind of void, another loss atop the career I'd already lost. Days blurred together as April turned to May. I went through the mechanical motions of existence, eating enough to survive, showering occasionally, responding to messages with brief assurances that I was fine, just taking some time off. But I wasn't living. Not really. Until one evening in early June, almost 2 months after my termination, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but some small spark of hope not yet extinguished made me pick up. "Michael, it's Alicia from the development team." Her voice was hushed, urgent. "I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere private? Not anywhere near the office?" Alicia had been a junior developer I'd mentored when she joined the company 3 years ago. Puzzled but intrigued, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop far from the offices the following morning. She arrived looking nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder as if expecting to be followed. "What's going on?" I asked, suddenly aware this was my first real social interaction in weeks. "It's about the AI integration project," she said, leaning forward and lowering her voice. "Kevin's team can't make it work. They've been trying to build from his documentation, but something's missing. Critical components aren't explained. The architecture doesn't make sense without some underlying logic he can't articulate. They're facing a deadline with Westfield Corporation, our biggest potential client, and everything's falling apart. Kevin's blaming the development team, she continued, saying we're not following his architecture correctly, that we're not skilled enough to implement his vision. But Michael, we all know it was your project. He's presenting your slides, using your terminology, but the actual implementation is hitting wall after wall because he doesn't understand the foundational concepts. As she spoke, something stirred in me, a realization slowly dawning through the fog of depression. Michael, Alicia asked, did you keep records of your development process? Anything that proves you created the original architecture? Because right now, Kevin is running the AI division into the ground, and when it fails, he's going to need scapegoats. I had spent most of my career being meticulous about documentation and backups, but in my depressed state, I'd forgotten a crucial fact: my personal cloud storage. For years, I had religiously backed up all my projects. Every iteration, time-stamped commit messages, design documents, test results, even voice notes I'd recorded while working through complex problems. I might have something, I said, feeling a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. Let me check when I get home. That night, I accessed my cloud account, and there it was, everything. The entire AI project with date stamps showing my work beginning 6 months before Kevin's presentation. Email exchanges between Kevin and me where I'd shared updates, and he'd given minimal feedback. Calendar invitations. Recordings of meetings where I'd discussed the approach and architecture in detail, with Kevin present and asking basic questions that revealed his limited understanding. But what to do with this evidence? I couldn't just email the executive team. They'd likely dismiss it as the bitter accusations of a fired employee. I needed leverage, someone with enough power to force them to acknowledge the truth. The answer came from an unexpected source. While sorting through files, I found contact information for Edward Westfield, the VP of Operations at Westfield Corporation. We'd met briefly at a tech conference the previous year and exchanged information after I'd given him a demonstration of an early version of my AI concept. This was my moment of decision. I could move on, find another job eventually, rebuild my career from scratch, or I could fight for recognition of my work, not just for my sake, but for every developer who'd ever had their contributions stolen. After a long shower, my first in days, and a properly cooked meal, I drafted an email to Edward. I kept my tone objective, professional, and fact-based. I explained that I had been the lead developer on the AI integration project that Westfield was considering implementing, including documentation proving my role. I didn't accuse Kevin directly of intellectual theft, simply presented the facts and timeline, offering to discuss the project's architecture in detail. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes before I finally pressed it, not knowing if it would lead anywhere or simply be ignored. Then I went to bed and, for the first time in months, slept soundly. The response came faster than I expected. By noon the next day, Edward had not only replied, but called, requesting an immediate video meeting. During our conversation, I walked him through my documentation, demonstrating how the project had evolved under my direction. "This is concerning, Michael," he said, his expression grave. "We're scheduled to sign a major contract with your former company next week, based largely on this AI capability. But if there are questions about its development or implementation..." "I'm not trying to sabotage the company," I clarified. "I still care about the product. I just want the truth acknowledged and the project implemented correctly." "I understand," Edward replied, "and I appreciate your professionalism. Let me make some inquiries." What happened next unfolded with stunning speed. Within hours, James, the CEO of my former company, personally called me. His tone a mixture of concern and forced cordiality. "Michael, I've just had a disturbing conversation with Edward Westfield. There seems to be some confusion about the AI integration project's development." I remained silent, letting him continue. "He's under the impression you were the primary architect rather than Kevin, and has some documentation supporting this claim. Would you care to explain?" "I have all the original files, development logs, and recorded meetings demonstrating my role," I replied calmly. "I'd be happy to share them with you." There was a long pause. "I think we should discuss this in person. Can you come to the office tomorrow morning? Say 9 a.m.? The next morning, I showered, shaved, and dressed in my best suit. I arrived at my former workplace for the first time since my dismissal. The same security guard who had escorted me out now welcomed me with a visitor badge. The receptionist who had avoided eye contact on my last day now greeted me warmly, as if nothing had happened. I was shown to the main conference room, where James sat with Maureen from HR, and surprisingly, Thomas, my original mentor, who had recently returned as a board member. Conspicuously absent was Kevin. "Michael, thank you for coming," James began, his tone more respectful than I'd heard in years. "We've been reviewing the materials you shared, as well as our internal records, and there appear to be some discrepancies in how the AI project was attributed." Thomas spoke up, his familiar voice reassuring. "What James is trying to say, Michael, is that we've confirmed you were indeed the primary developer and architect of the AI integration system. Kevin appears to have misrepresented his contributions substantially." "Misrepresented," I repeated, the corporate euphemism for theft almost making me laugh. "We want to make this right," James continued. "We're prepared to offer you a position as Director of AI Innovation, reporting directly to Thomas, with a substantial compensation package and full recognition for your work." I looked at them sitting there calmly, as if offering me a promotion could erase the past 2 months of depression, the betrayal, the casual disposal of 14 years of loyalty. "And Kevin?" I asked. James shifted uncomfortably. "Kevin has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." I nodded. "I appreciate the offer, but I need time to think about it." "What happens with the Westfield contract?" "That's part of why we're having this conversation," James admitted. "Edward Westfield has made it clear they want the actual architect of the system involved. They've postponed signing until this situation is resolved." Of course. Business imperatives, not ethics, had driven this sudden desire for justice. "I'll give you my decision in 48 hours, I said, standing up. "And I'd like my personal items that were still in my desk when I was escorted out." The next 2 days were transformative. I spoke with Jenny, who had never given up on me, just given me space. I consulted with a lawyer about my options. I meditated, walked along Seattle's waterfront, and gradually reconnected with the passion for coding that had defined my life before the betrayal. When I returned to the company, I brought my own terms, carefully crafted with my lawyer's guidance. Public acknowledgement of my role, complete restoration of my employment record with back pay plus damages, and a new position as Chief Innovation Officer. Reporting directly to the board, with equity and board observer rights. James balked at first, but with the Westfield contract hanging in the balance and the potential legal and reputational damage of a lawsuit looming, he eventually agreed to all terms, in writing, with signatures and legal witnesses present. Kevin was terminated the following week after the investigation revealed he had not only taken credit for my work, but for contributions from several other developers over the years, creating a pattern of intellectual theft that had gone unchallenged due to his political skill and intimidation tactics. The day I officially returned to the company, I walked through the development department where applause broke out, spontaneous and genuine. Developers understand the sacred nature of creation, the violation inherent in having your code claimed by another. The team's validation meant more than any corporate title or compensation package could convey. In the month since my return, the company has transformed. Thomas and I have worked together to rebuild the culture of innovation and integrity, implementing processes to ensure proper attribution and creating opportunities for technical staff to present their own work directly to leadership. The Westfield contract was signed, making the company's stock jump 30% in a week, and my story circulated throughout the tech community, a cautionary tale about intellectual theft and the power of meticulous documentation. I still keep backups of everything I create, not from paranoia, but from professional wisdom. Not all victories come from fighting. Sometimes they come from simply being prepared for when the fight finds you. I've learned that your greatest asset isn't just your technical skill or creativity, but your commitment to preserving and protecting your contributions. As for Kevin, I heard he's having trouble finding another position in the industry. It turns out reputation matters in tech circles, and word travels fast about executives who build careers on stolen code. Justice delivered not through vengeance, but through truth, the most powerful force in any system, human or digital.